John Gillespie, a reporter for a local Green Bay, Wisconsin TV station, was listening to a police scanner the afternoon of September 1st, 1988, when he heard of a pursuit in progress. By the time John and his photographer arrived, the pursuit had been on foot through a residential neighborhood. John, trying to capture the rest on film, went ahead of the chase and positioned himself for a better shot. Suddenly, the man being pursued was headed directly towards the van John was sitting in. Faced with a moral dilemma, John thought, "Do I stop him?" Hesitating for only a brief second, John jumped out of the van and confronted the criminal, and was able to stop him because the man thought John was a plainclothes police officer. The reaction from the community was a positive one. John was awarded for his roast and was deeply appreciated by the Green Bay Police. Pointer's website says it is a school for journalists, future journalists, and teachers of journalists. Their main goal is to have journalists have better prepared to produce quality journalism. It was founded in 1975 by Nelson Pointer, a journalist who believed in the value of independent journalism and public interest.
Pointer has a set of guidelines on how journalists should act in a crisis situation. John Gillespie failed to follow two of these in particular. In covering an ongoing crisis situation, the Pointer Guidelines for Covering Terrorist Actions and Crisis Situations advises journalists to do the following. Cover the story aggressively, but do not get in the way of those who are responsible for public safety and medical care. Do not interfere with law enforcement agencies in the midst of a crisis.
Remember that things can go wrong very quickly in a live report, endangering lives or intensifying an already bad situation. Be ready to instantly pull the plug on a live report when necessary.
When John Gillespie jumped out of his van to stop the criminal on the run, he broke the cardinal rule, do not interfere with law enforcement agencies in the midst of a crisis. Although his interference had a positive outcome, others aren't always as lucky. There are many more negative outcomes that can come with interfering than positive ones, like in Gillespie's situation. A journalist should never interfere with law enforcement. The risk of something going wrong is too high to take.
When Gillespie saw the criminal headed straight for his van, he should have pulled the plug. However, John took it upon himself to do something to try and help the situation. He involved himself in what could have been potentially very dangerous for him and others.
Roger Regan is a retired lieutenant for the New Brunswick, New Jersey Police Department. He has been in law enforcement for 30 years. In this interview, he talks about the dangers of journalists crossing police lines.
In general, as a young patrolman and also as a patrol supervisor, I found the arrival of the media at a crime scene or an investigation. Usually they presented more of a problem. You had to keep them from going beyond police lines. You also had to keep them from talking to potential witnesses. And while they do have the obligation to get a story, they should also know that the facts should be gathered by law enforcement first so that we can discern who's telling the truth and who may not be candid.
John Gillespie crossed police lines when he decided to stop the criminal on the run. He went beyond his role as a journalist and tried to take on the role as a law enforcement official.
What you're about to see is the reason police officers go through extensive training for high-speed chases. Photojournalist Rob Forrest heard about the chase on his police scanner. He was waiting here at 5th Avenue when police made their bold move. The pursuit began with a robbery at this check cashing store on Morse Road. A witness told police the robber fled in a brown minivan. Columbus police began the pursuit before handing off to a cruiser from Gahanna.
When Rob Forrest heard about the high-speed pursuit over his police scanner, he took to the scene to cover the story aggressively. While doing so, Rob did not interfere with law enforcement. While filming, he was an appropriate distance away from the police officers and criminal as not to hinder their performance. The public needs to know about what law enforcement is doing. In order to receive this information, they need journalists to cover crime and police actions. This means that both journalists and police must work side by side. In the case of John Gillespie, he confused the roles and failed to fulfill his role as a journalist and tried to fulfill the role of a police officer. Rob Forrest did not confuse the roles and was able to report on the police without interfering with their job.
The press sometimes, in their exuberance to report a story, don't check their facts. They may put their own thoughts into a story. They may editorialize. And when the story is found not to be accurate, instead of taking the blame for their enthusiasm, the police are often left to explain why the story that is given is different from what the police version is. And that causes distrust in the community. Sometimes at a crime scene, especially one that may be a murder or even a serious accident investigation, a fire, people from the media will respond and they show absolutely no sympathy for the victims or the victim's family. You'll frequently see someone who's just lost a close friend or a family member with the microphone stuck under their mouth, being asked, how do you feel about this? Most people are in shock and they really don't know how to respond. And we've become so used to seeing this that it's almost an accepted way of life.